decide how big I want her on here, and I'm not gonna most people would go right into doing all these details first without really deciding and mapping out how big you want it to be. So I'm gonna say about this big, that's close to life size, because I want to be able to put a little of her collar. I'm not going to put this arm right here because I feel like that's a weird cut, and it kind of takes you out of the picture right there.
Okay.
It won't translate good in a drawing. So I think just that would be fine. It looks like she's leaning forward, and this will be kind of blurry down here. I really won't have that. It'll just be the collar right there. So I think that leaves you enough room. The next thing I'm going to think about is she got any kind of a tilt to her head, which almost always they do. So I go right here through the fulcrum, which is right in here, up through the center of the nose to kind of see how that tilt is. This would be straight, and your brain is going to constantly try to straighten this drawing up on you. So I'm going to put that. I'm going to hold that like that. If I'm having a lot of trouble with it, I'll go over here like this and put it like this. And I'm going to go ahead and do a line on here. I start off kind of with a cross. Just because I'm doing a face, I don't have to do a whole lot of other planning and shapes, because I'm just doing a face here, so I don't have a whole lot to worry about. Then her features, our brain's going to try to consistently make them straight. But her features are also perpendicular to that cross. And if I'm having trouble, I usually go with the eyes, because the eyebrows are hard to read sometimes. But I usually go with the eyes, and there's about that much of a tilt to her eyes, okay? So all that's going to be erased, which is why your paper is so important to have something that will erase. And you can tell real quickly if it's not going to erase. And charcoal is usually so light and organic that it'll erase easy. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look for any kind of little beautiful pattern. And I do see a little bit of a swirl around this way. And I kind of like that. It keeps me from being too stiff with my drawing. So this is real strong, this little bow, and the way her hair comes this way. So I like to do that. It's just a little added thing that I do on my work. This is blurry because it's away from us. This is the most focal part of her face. You're going to spend more time on making this crisp and sharp. Even this eye starts to soften a little bit because it's going away from us just a tiny bit. Even her mouth is really soft. This is probably the sharpest part of the whole thing. Okay, so and I do like the feeling of this pretty curve right here, so I'm going to do that. Then I'm going to out her proportions, because we like to divide the face into thirds, from the hairline to the brows, from the brows to the bottom of the nose, and from the bottom of the nose to the chin. So I like to figure out what her proportions are like, because getting it to look like her, the proportions are absolutely essential. If you don't have these right, it will never look like her. You can do beautiful little lips that are perfect, but if they're too high up or too low down, it will not look like her. So one of the first things I try to do is figure out how does she compare. And I just pick a place. I'm going to say here to here, and then she's longer here, and then here to here is the same. So these two, from here to here and here to here, are the same. And this one's a little bit longer. So when I get ready to divide her face, I'm going to be looking for that. Before I do that, though, because she's a little child and she's tiny, all of her features are going to be low down on her head. If she were an adult, her features would be halfway. Her eyes would be up here. But she's a little girl. And babies are way down here. A baby's features are going to probably be way down in this lower third, almost of her head. That has to do with trying to make it look more like a tiny child. And if you get them up even just a tiny bit too high, it won't look like a child. It'll look too old. So I'm going to figure out where my halfway mark is on her head. She could be tilted, so there's a lot of possibilities here. I'm going to guess that's the halfway mark, and that is. So I'm going to put a little mark right here in the halfway mark to remind me that her eyes are going to go below. Top of the head, bottom of the chin, and I'm going to guess my halfway mark. Let me double check it. I always keep a thin brush like this in my hand to measure with. So I'm off a little bit, so I'm going to adjust it. Sometimes my eyeballs guesses it, and sometimes my eyeball doesn't.
There's bottled water over here.
Okay, so halfway mark, okay? Keep your little cross in here so you won't, because your brain will start straightening it up. You don't even realize it, but your brain will start making the eyes even. All right, so the next thing I'm gonna do is figure out my proportions of length, okay? So here's my little swirl, top of the head, bottom of the chin, halfway mark. Now I'm gonna guess about where her hairline would go. And you could say I'm dividing the head into 4 if you want to. So you could say 1, 2, 3. 3 is a little bit longer, and 4. You could say 4. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. And we already know that this is a little longer than the other 2. I'm going to put a mark here to show you where I'm going, because her eyebrow is here, here. You know, her eyebrow's on an angle. So I'm going to say, let's split the difference, and I'm going to say here to here is what I'm measuring. Here to here. And you can immediately see the longer space is right here. See? It's a little bit longer. So I got to go back over here. A little bit longer. A little bit longer than that one. I might have adjusted it a little bit too much. I'm gonna go back to where I was. This seems tedious, and it's not a natural thing to do, and you will hate it, and you will resist it, and you will not do it. But if you can eventually develop this habit, you will save yourself a lot of grief later on of having to correct all the time, because you don't have your features in the right place. Now, some people like to print it exactly the same, so that when they're drawing, all they're doing is they're going over here and measuring. Let's see how close I've gotten. I've gotten it pretty close. There to there is that size. Here to here is that size. I moved it down just a little. And then here to here is that size. So that's pretty close. Then all I do is start. Now I've got these proportions of length, my halfway mark. So now I'm gonna just start, I'm gonna make some marks. I'm gonna move down this face. This is from Daniel Green, like a window shade being pulled down. Reminding myself that this is the halfway mark, and here's the halfway mark, okay? So these little eyes are gonna go well below this halfway mark, because my brain will go ahead and make me put these eyes up here, okay?
Professional videographer. I was like, I want to put her eyes on that line.
Yeah, so your brain will tell you to put them up here. My brain will do it. I was taught to just do the thirds and start drawing. But since I've started doing a lot of children, I immediately find my halfway mark. And I make a straw, and we could put a report cover or something over this if it were good, but I've printed you a couple, so you should be okay. So this is my little checkpoint here, that the eyes have to go well down below here, like right there.
Jeez.
Way down. And that's going to make it look more like a little girl. And then her eyebrow has to go up above here. Okay? So I'm going to start.
Is that because she has to grow into her face? Is the
idea? Yes. The more, as you grow, and then small, again, and nobody tells you this, so you just have all these older looking kids that you do if you don't know that these features are all, Shirley told me this, everything's scrunched down here. So I'm going to start with the top of the eyebrow, maybe indicate how thick the eyebrow is. Then I can easily judge this space, the top of her lid, her lash line, the bottom of her eye. There's a little bit of an indication, and then there's a little bit of a under eye socket, feeling of the socket there. Then I'm going to move.
Just guessing that?
I'm just guessing. I'm moving slowly down on this side. And I don't know how far apart they are yet. And then over here, I know she's on a tilt. I got to make sure my tilt is right, because that can get off. All right. And it might be me. It might have been me, Dorothy, that walked off with it. You know how I do. I do that because I lay my water everywhere. So is that your water right there, Sydney?
This is mine.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Where's the water?
All right.
Where's the water?
So I don't know how wide yet, but I'm going to go ahead and indicate kind of the top of her eyebrow, the bottom of her eyebrow, the top of her lid, her eyelash line, the bottom of her eye. And I'm going to hope I'm gonna be kinda in sync with what's going on over here. Now, I know this is the nostril line here, so I'm gonna go, and my brain's gonna wanna do it straight, but I'm gonna remember the tilt, the cross, and I'm gonna have an angle here. I'm gonna move, is there any shadow under her nose? Not really, not much, there's a little bit of something right there. I'm gonna come to what I think, I can judge this distance pretty accurately. The top of her lip, the opening of her lip, the opening of her mouth, and I'll go ahead and make that dark. The bottom of her lip, and then her chin. Now, if I've moved down right and I've guessed everything, I'll be able to tell, oh, there's the bottom of her lip. Have I got enough room? And I do, pretty close. So the first face I put on here will just be a face. It won't be her yet, but it'll be a face. It'll be something for me to start with. So now I've got my whole thing from top to bottom sort of marked. You'll confuse yourself, you'll get really frustrated with it. If this bothers you, don't do it and just draw it, and then as I come around and help you check it, we'll correct it. Now I can begin to work from the inside out to draw these features, because most people will do a big round circle and then they'll try to fill everything in. And I find it better to work from the inside out. So a couple things I'm gonna check. How much space does she have between her eyes? And if a person is looking straight at you, there's usually 5 eyes across a straight on face, but she's turned, so we're seeing more of this side of her face. She's got a little bit of extra space between her eyes, and children do sometimes until their eyes get bigger. So I'm gonna go from her lash line to her tear duct, from her tear duct to here, from here to just past her pupil. And that's the width, and this is a half of an eye right here. So I can kind of gauge, I have to kind of guess this first eye, but since I have my sizes almost the same, I checked them a minute ago, I can come over here and I can start with about the width of the eye, and it's usually the same. If you can see some of the eye socket, which if I were guessing where her socket is, because there's a hole in the little skull right here, and the eyeball is actually that big, okay? So the eye will be the same this way as it is this way. And you can double check that to see how wide the eye, that's a lot of things. And then here's my next spot, which is here. Here's my next spot, which is just past the pupil. All right. So I've got the top of the lid. I could go ahead and sketch that eye. And I'm not gonna do an almond shape like that. I'm gonna really make myself slow down. I'm gonna look at all these changes. This line goes up, over, over, down. The little ball of her eye, and here's the eyelid. I'm not gonna do too much detail on it. I'm just gonna quickly sketch it. I can see the whole bottom of the ball of the iris, and it's way over here. See the whole bottom of that. I may have her eyes a little too big, so I'll have to adjust that. And I'm not gonna worry too much about it, but I need to get a little bit of that eye on to see where I'm going. So 1, 2, 3 is just past her pupil on that side. 1, 2, 3 is just past her pupil. So I'm gonna go ahead and put her pupil here. That's gonna remind me of where that eye needs to go. I'm doing this a little bit differently than I did yours, Ashley. But I can go ahead and start drawing that eye there, because I know where that pupil needs to go. And I'm not really gonna put, because she's so light right here, I'm not gonna put much underneath her eyes, okay? Because it'll look a little bit funny, but if you put a dark line under here, it's gonna look off right off the bat, because she doesn't have any dark lashes on the bottom. All right, so now I kind of have an idea of the eyes. Here to here, here to here, and here to just past the pupil. Normally, you'll fit 3 eyes, 1, 2, 3, and you'll know exactly where to put that other eye. But those are just powers of observation. So then I can move down and I can see I know where the length of her nose goes, right here. So where does the side of her nose go? This side goes between the iris and the pupil right there. this side goes straight down from my little mark right here. You think, wow, that's a really wide nose. Well, babies usually have a pretty wide nose, and I like to put a circle on here. You can see this little circle on the tip of her nose. And then each of their nostrils is a little circle, but I see more of this nostril than I do this nostril. So that one's a little bit elongated. It'll look crazy and weird for a minute, but then you can just stick the little nostrils right in here, and you'll get your eraser here in a minute and erase that. Now I can also check to see where her mouth lines up. And it comes just past her iris here. And if you want to hold a straight line down so that you know, you do that. I don't know how high or low it goes yet, but I know it's just past her iris here. And on this side, it's just past her tear duct here. Too low, it's probably here. And her mouth is also going to be perpendicular to this cross. So your brain's going to want to put it in this way, and you're going to get a funky mouth if you're not careful. I can also check the width of her mouth before I get too involved in it and see what it compares to. It's the same as her nostril to just above her eye. So perfect. Well, there's all kinds of things you can check to correct yourself along the way. An oval, and an oval, and a little circle here. And then 2 ovals for the bottom lip. And she's got a really full bottom lip. And then you already kind of have this little thing drawn. I draw the center of the mouth before I ever put any lips on. So it goes up along those circles, then it goes down, and it goes this way. And everybody wants to do lips kind of like this, you know, just kind of like Halloween wax lips. But it's really better if you focus on the center line. You don't really even see her bottom lip. It's just a little shadow that's defining her bottom lip. And the top lip is usually under lit, so it's in shadow. Is that your eraser? Here's one. So then I just go back in here and erase out a little bit. This may be a little bit wide. It feels a little bit wide. And then sometimes you'll see a circle down here on her chin. I don't always. She's really fair, so she's really, really fair. You're not going to see a whole lot of things. So that's how I start. Then I can real quickly see that there's not much space right here. The eye probably goes like that. I might have overshot that a little. So here to here is real easy to see. Over here, I can measure it. It's an eye width almost to her hair. So there's her hair, where her hair starts, her little bow. Her ears, because she's tilted, the top of her ear is even with the bottom of her iris. The bottom of her ear, because she's tilted, so that's why you can't get a formula, you have to measure everything, is just above her lips. That's where her ear goes. From her nostril to her cheek is the same as, that's what, just below her nose to her chin. And I like to put little circles in their cheeks because they'll make them look more like a baby. You can kind of see how the side of the mouth kind of goes around a circle here. And then you can kind of see a circle here. You won't always see a circle. You can measure from the side of her mouth to here and see what it's the same as. It's the same as from her eye to there. And then I go slowly around this face. And when I'm doing the face, because you're going to want to just do a line and it's not going to be right. So I'm looking at how straight this is. It's pretty straight right here. That's the straightest I've ever seen it. You could probably go and carve it down a little bit, but it's pretty straight. Your brain's going to want to make it like this. But look, it's not like that. It's like this. This would be straight, and that would be a little bit of a tilt. That would be straight, a little bit of a tilt. I like to go ahead and put some of the hair in. So top of the nose here, I could go ahead and mass in this little piece of the hair. Got that little curl right there. There's a lot going on here, like 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 4 angles around here. So 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, this way, and then we know this is her little ear right here, and I can see that little piece of dark, so I'll go ahead and draw that in. And I can tell from here to here, I can measure this much easier than I can all the way from here all the way to the edge of her ear. So that's why if you'll work from the inside and measure, you'll get a much more accurate drawing. And then I just go ahead and come back in here. I can erase all this stuff out. I can do, kind of see how that goes. Her little hair comes out like this. Draw real angular if you can. Don't do anything without looking. This little piece of hair here comes just over from this, and it's even at the top of her eye here. Her little bow. And I try to get a neck on pretty quick. So this part of her collar comes straight down from her nostril here. And it's the same as from her eyebrow to the bottom of her nose is the depth of it. And it's going to come right around to the back of her ear here. Matching angles. I'm thinking about the way the angles go. I don't know what we'll do over there, but we'll just kind of leave that. Then you can see the little piece of her sleeve here. You can see this triangle of her neck. If you follow this triangle up, it goes right through her eye. And then her sweet little hair over here. And I would probably go ahead and get this ear in. This is the top of the ear, the little nostril, and then any little darks you see in there. And then go ahead, I like to go ahead and get these darks in pretty quick because it helps me, it kind of anchors it so you can kind of see where you're going. Here's a dark. Here's a dark. A little bit of dark here.
Am I the only one that didn't know that this is the way you do it?
Well, you can do it any way you want. Like I say, there's a lot to think about when you do this, and it'll throw you off and it'll make you go, oh, there's no way I can remember all that. So just sit down and draw it. But when I come around to help you, this is what I'm doing. I'm measuring, I'm using plumb lines to see how, now it's not exactly her, but it's a baby's face. Mm-hmm. And so then I'd get my little tortillon out, mm-hmm. and I'd start, because a baby with these harsh charcoal lines never looks like a baby. They're always too harsh. Mm-hmm. So then I would begin to mass in some areas, soften and make everything really blurred over here. I would go ahead and draw some detail. You can move to a charcoal pencil and get a little bit more detail with her features. She's got shadows across here. I would go ahead and erase the cross out because you don't need that anymore. Get these lines out and just start making it look more like her. I can automatically see that this is off, that I got to get some shadows in here, or that looks too flat across here. But it's a face.